This is something I've been hoping for some time. We could convene. Jeanne and Regina are two of the most remarkable mediums I've ever met. We've known each other for about 5 years, I guess 5 years now. We met here in the Bay Area. There's a group down in Silicon Valley called the Foundation for Mind Being Research, and I know some of the people there. And someone pointed me, this is about 5 years ago, to a website that presented transcripts of a channeling of the astronauts, the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger, which was the first space shuttle to be lost in an accident. And I was totally blown away by this channeling. So I contacted the people I knew at the FMBR. We got together. Turned out that Regina and Jeanne were about to give a presentation in the Bay Area in which they were to be channeling the Native American elders. So I attended this session and I was just completely blown away. I've known a lot of mediums in the past, but what these two wonderful beings were able to accomplish and bring through in that session was I would say, it sounds like a cliche, but mind-blowing is the best characterization I can come up with. Anyway, we met at that meeting, as did Cindy, who unfortunately can't be here today. But we bonded instantly, became friends, and ended up working together for a period of time. Regina and Jeanne would come up and visit the Bay Area and do channeling sessions with a private group that we had down in Silicon Valley. Eventually, we put together what we call our Cosmic Voices team, where on our website, cosmicvoices.network, we present, actually, when you go to the messages page on our website, there's two columns. One is channeling from folks whose names pretty much everyone would recognize. Another column of names that practically nobody would recognize. So without going into a lot of detail about that, welcome, Jeanne and Regina. Take it from here. Tell us your stories. And we might say a little bit about the Zoom meetings that we used to have on a very regular basis, and some of the personalities who would crash our meetings.
Jeanne? I can't see you, so I have no idea where you are.
Well, you know what I look like. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a very exciting day. I have to preface this by saying that one of the famous people that their writing appears on Cosmic Voices, Robin Williams, has been playing games with me for the last hour. And just wanted to make sure, and Dan can appreciate that you guys know they're still here. We had a little kind of trio, and there's lots of stories around them, but I'll just tell you today that Robin Williams came through, and he is our psychological caregiver. When we feel particularly stressed or frustrated or it's difficult, he comes around and entertains us, and really, really lifts our spirits. He can be very serious, but he also, as you know, can be incredibly funny. He's here. He wants to say hi to everybody. He's also bringing some of his favorite people with him, which would be Christopher Reeve and his wife Dana, as well as Patrick Swayze and John Denver. And of course, there are others like Carrie Fisher standing in the background, and the others who are trying to push their way in and say, me, me, me. Those of you who were on the Zoom last week with us, and Wendy was asking us about, are they still with us, and what have they learned, what's come from this? Well, they have become our dearest friends, and coming to realize, as Richard had spoken last week, of groups on a mission, and these people definitely are part of our mission group. And so they're here enjoying the conversations, the energy as well. We worked on Cosmic Voices during COVID. We had met Cindy. Regina and I had met Cindy when we had done a workshop up there in the San Jose Bay Area. And that started a deep friendship that then led to her wanting to put together something that would help people's spirits be uplifted in times when it's very hard often to see the good and to feel that there's a purpose and to move through some of the darkness that we see. So it came out of that. It was amazing because they were just all lined up, and we still have them lined up. There you go. And why us? Well, I guess we've proven to be reliable, authentic, and we're not in it for any kind of, show and tell, no Hollywood vibes or anything. We're just in it to bring a message forth. We're the messengers, and it's just a very very loving and fulfilling experience to bring these people through. So
I would second all of that, except to add that the Cosmic Voices network, it actually began because Cindy had find out what are the voices on the other side? What are they saying about? We were losing so many people, COVID people. It was out of control when she had made the first initial contact with me. She goes, "Do you think you could get 10 people to channel through those? Maybe some famous ones?" And I'm looking at her going, I don't know. Really, I don't know. And then I mentioned it to Jeanne and goes, "Sign me up." Jeanne says, "Sign me up. They're all here." I'm a lot more hesitant. I am really totally the reluctant medium, but I've now stepped into the frying pan, and I'm here with you. And we've put out a website because of Dan. He has a mastery of website skills, and the wonderful stories that were put together because of all the entities on the other side. And truly, I don't even know how many they are, and I never counted. We just kept producing. And Jeanne has always mentioned over the years that she was the psychic to the stars. She did not realize it was the psychic to the dead ones, and but dead transitioned ones now. But she has done an amazing job. I think we both have done an extraordinary thing that neither one of us were expecting to happen. We just didn't know that when we would sit down, clear our minds and clear our plates and clear everything out of our way, and the entities that would show up, it blew our socks off, frankly. It blew mine off. And I'm overwhelmed. I'm grateful that these messages are out in the public. They're slowly getting out there, which is a nice trickle effect. It's not overwhelming. And the word is getting out, and that is fantastic. It's getting out because Dan is doing so much promotion with his book. He's included the website, and it's just such a supportive way for all of us to know the one message that all the entities on the other side want us to know is they're right here. They didn't die. We don't die. We live forever. That spirit, our essence, our soul. And what's been remarkable, even for me as I go back and read some of these messages, I'm there again. I'm present with that entity again. I can feel them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I brought this through. It always surprises me. And it's just surprising.
Regina, can you tell a few stories about some of the folks on the other side who've kind of made their presence known a day or two in advance?
A week or two or three advance.
Okay. Yeah. and how you first sensed them, and some of the sort of the dance you did with some of them before they came through fully.
Well,
yes. Go ahead, Jeanne.
I was thinking as Regina was speaking, I need to go back to when I first met Regina. We have known each other since we had our second babies together. We've had a lifelong relationship and friendship, which is so unusual, I think, to myself in terms of like these. We're not dueling psychics by any means, but we're this wonderful duo. I happen to be living in a motorhome park with my daughter. I was recently divorced, and she and her husband had moved into the same park. She had a daughter already, and she was advertising for water aerobics, which she was going to lead. And, it was 78, so I had a pyramid on my head. And I was walking around the living room part, and I had lots of windows in my mobile home. And she looked at me through the window and saw this pyramid on my head and said, I got to know this person. And then it just went from there. And basically, as Regina shared her experiences as a young child with the light and with spirit, I began to teach her everything that I knew. And throughout this whole time period, we've established this very soul connected relationship, which has allowed us to work so freely and easily with one another. And it's just built a huge bridge to the other world. The other thing is, the first time that I ever really experienced kind of officially a person from the other side who was famous was Freddie Prinze, when he committed suicide. And he committed suicide on my mother's birthday, which was the 28th of January, which turned then into being the Challenger explosion and accident. And I was my first experience sitting with a spirit who was very despondent. I had been trained in doing rescue work with spirits who left suddenly or, incorrectly or whatever. And so it was not uncomfortable for me to help him understand his transition. And then it just seemed to build. So lots of experiences through the years. But he was the first that I experienced, and who was also then, known in the Hollywood realm. And it just kind of would slide in. But basically, my experiences were just one-on-one for a lot of things that helped me develop into that and being ready for it. The big thing that happened, of course, to me, for many things, but one of them was when the Challenger crew came to me the first night. And that was the first time then for the next few years that I handled so many. And it seemed to be, beyond my reach. Anyway, so then that led us to other things and a lot of communication with spirits. And I had a small group that, in fact, some of the people on here today, Marie and Roy and Mary Beth, are from our group that we had worked, all of you probably have your spirit groups and your spirit circles and your healing groups and such. And we just worked quietly because the Challenger crew sent us that information. It got into the government. It got into places that put us in a very dark perspective. So we kind of went underground, to protect ourselves and our families. But through all of that, we were still definitely very connected to spirit. And they would just come to me after they passed. Now, not all of them that are Hollywood types are in contact with us who have passed. Just a certain group, because again, we're in groups. And but they've been incredible. I can't even give you a specific without taking way too long on this time frame to think of any specifics other than the ones that I have mentioned. I have writing from Anne Heche. We haven't put that up on Cosmic Voices. I have writing from John Travolta's wife, Kelly Preston. She said she really didn't want it to be public, but she was very honest and clear about herself. We have writing from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but she didn't want it to go up either, and we respect that. I think basically, from my point of view, and I think from Regina also, is that we just help them get used to their new life, whatever reasons beyond that. So I guess I'm not being very specific today, but it's always been. I don't remember when it hasn't been, and I never really had thought I was going to be a psychic medium. The only thing that I really was focused on, besides my teaching and my music, was really being very close to that God energy. That was really what drove me. I remember Gandhi saying, you can be psychic without being spiritual, but you can't be spiritual and not be psychic. So that always really walked with me.
Well, thanks, Jeanne. I would like to go back to Regina for a moment and ask the question again about your experience of receiving these contacts, connections, sometimes just inklings in advance, and then having them grow into a full contact experience.
Sure. Because I'm just who I am, and I'm out here in the middle of Nebraska. There's not a lot of people here, so the spirit can get pretty loud out here and has a free will, a voice a lot of times in plays, but they try to get a hold of me when they do, and it's a lot of them I don't know. I've never even heard of them. And I'll mention one of them. Uh, I was writing an email to Jan, and I think it was to Dan, or to Cindy, and it was talking about uh, talking. My mind was using all these metaphors that had to do with dams and flow of water, electricity, and everything like that. And I thought, what the heck? And I was even using words and thinking about words that there's just not even in my vocabulary. First of all, I have no electrical skills or anything like that. I'm a mom, 2 kids, full grown, and a wife of a husband, a firefighter. That's my life. It's been good. That's it. Anyway, so where did I come up with this? And all the rest of the day until the next day, I kept feeling and hearing water, just like I'm standing over a dam. And it was an amazing effect. Yet here I am over in dry land farming. There's no dam here. I'd have to go down to the creek to hear a little trickle of water, but no flow like spillways and stuff. So I was telling my husband and about this at a dinner time, and he said, "Well, why don't you just Google it? See what you're getting there." And so I put in, because I knew this energy was feminine, because it just felt so comfortable with me. So I put female, and then I heard the word first from behind me, and female engineer or hydro engineer, I think is what I use for water engineer, because I asked my husband, what does that mean to be over the dam and working that? And it comes up with what's her name? Elizabeth Clark. Elizabeth Clark? Gosh, I can't even remember her name right now. That's terrible. But that was her. And she just went, that's me. And this was just beaming behind me, just all of a sudden appeared in full force. And the next day we had a wonderful writing. And I was so surprised. I was overwhelmed. And that's how it's come for me. They've been all odd entities, unknown, but very well known in their field. And so I have had the great fortune of being able to almost go back in time for some of these people. Yes, Dan.
Please tell us who Elizabeth Clark was and what her accomplishment was and what the connection is with the hydroelectricity.
Well, she was the first female engineer hired by General Dynamics, and she created a calculator that the men had to use. They eventually used in electricity and their things. And she was the woman in charge on the turbines at Hoover Dam. So I mean, who would have thunk? Not me. But her information that came through was just profound, because she said, "Oh, I'm friends with Estelle Roberts," that she knew her when she was alive. And they were very good friends, and they had held seances together. And her curiosity was the mathematical randomness about how often an item would show up in the seance tables, whether it's a button or something else. And then she couldn't believe these things were, what is that called? What is that called when they appear? Apports,
yeah.
Thank you. And she just couldn't believe this, but so she was trying to calculate the mathematical stats on this, and she was sure she could figure this out, that how they were creating it, until Estelle Roberts' guide, Red Cloud, appeared before her, and that she said that was it. That was it. She was full blown into spiritualism and recognizing the value of entities coming back and forth, and seeing and hearing them coming through Red Cloud to tell their family members, I'm still alive, whether they were children or all sorts of individuals. And so she said she was very close with her. And when it was, go ahead, Dan. Sorry for all that.
Just very, very briefly. No, not at all. Thank you. I just wanted to share one of my experiences in working with you guys, where I'm nominally the editor of the website that we created. And when these messages come through, we transcribe them. unless they're delivered in text form. And then I do sort of minimal editing just to clean up the text and maybe remove any personal references that may be inappropriate. And on a couple of occasions, I wasn't quite able to understand what came through in a particular sentence. So I'd get in touch with Jeanne or Regina, and they would put me in touch with the source of the message. And I would dialogue with them to get a sense of the intention of their particular phrase or whatever it was. And it was great fun. I remember dialoguing with, was it Eleanor Roosevelt? Someday I'll write a book about that one experience.
I remember the experience, but don't remember the dialogue because that's so flat. Just like I couldn't remember. I just realized her name is Edith Clark. That was the name of the engineer. I'm sorry, I got the wrong name. But sorry, Edith, wherever you are.
Jeanne, did you want to?
Well, I wanted to go back a little bit. Estelle Roberts came to me when I lived in Santa Cruz, which was many, many years ago, when I had met Regina. And this was late 70s, early 80s, 1980s. My husband was a book fanatic, and he loved to frequent the bookstores there, used bookstores. And he came home with this book on Estelle Roberts, and I had no idea who she was. But then I read the book, and I was just blown away about her mediumship and her abilities. And she was, at the time, along this peer of Eileen Garrett. Anyway, so I had worked with, Estelle worked with me to help me develop my mediumship. She was very much close as my guide and gatekeeper, etc. And then many years later, when Regina was allowing herself to really develop more of her own mediumship skills, Estelle said, well, it's time for me to work with Regina. And so, we shared, and it was just, just like friends would share, oh, I have somebody that would really help you. And, you have this cosmic telephone and off you go. And she had a lot more experiences with Estelle and with Red Cloud in that regard. Regina's experiences with how things came to her were different than mine in some ways, because so many of the people that I was available to for Cosmic Voices, I'd already worked with. And especially like with John Lennon, I felt his presence with me just after he had been killed, and we sat for a long time together, and he wanted me to write his music for him. And I said, no, John, our styles are so different. I said, I just don't feel that I would, do you justice. I just really didn't feel that's what I was supposed to do. So I had already had experience with him. One of my signature songs that I sing a lot is Imagine. And every time I would sit at the piano to sing and perform for somebody when I would do Imagine, he'd be right behind me and say, sing it, Mama. And it was just that wonderful gesture. So, but I already had a rapport with him. Same thing with John Denver. When my name's, all these people are all talking at me. When Carrie Fisher passed, that was a very interesting experience, which led to her being, we understood our group energy collective. She came to me right away when it was reported that she had had an episode on her flight back into LAX in California, Los Angeles. And I could feel it right away. And she was swearing because she has a wonderful mouth. And, what am I doing? It's before Christmas and blah, blah, blah. And I said, it's because it's Christmas. That was her favorite holiday. And I knew she was gone. They kept her on life support, but she'd already left before she actually, completely transitioned. So I had already had a rapport with her. And George Harrison, he bought the house that my aunt used to work for, and all these little, not even 6 degrees of separation with so many of these people having lived out in this area. And it goes on and on with that experience. So they were already around me, and when we knew we wanted some writing, it's like they couldn't get through me fast enough. So for me, it wasn't necessarily feeling somebody around me for a couple of days. It was, all right, I'm going to give the morning to writing stuff for Cosmic Voices, and step right in. And I'd go, oh, it's so and so today. Oh, it's so and so today. So for me, they were like my old friends. I'd have to go back and look right now at all of them. Karen Carpenter, I've always loved her music. She had a very close relationship with Olivia Newton-John, and Olivia Newton-John used to talk about Karen coming to her on stage when she was performing, and there were a couple of stressful episodes, and she really needed that spiritual help. But these are all people that, when I was married to my oldest daughter's dad, we were looking for a record contract, and this Percy Faith's son, Peter Faith, was he represented musicians for getting music for shows and things like that, and they were going to bill us as the new Carpenters, which I thought was silly, but that's what they wanted us to do. So we always had this little tete-a-tete moving around these famous individuals. But anyway, they just were there for me. They just, oh, guess who I came to, guess who came and talked to me today? And at some point, we just had to shut it down because we had so many, and we didn't want to overwhelm the site. And we all have, the two of us have more to put on. But for me, it was just making the space for it. And then they were there.
I'd like to, I'm sorry, Jeanne, were you finished?
Oh, yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the Challenger and just relate an experience of my own. A few years ago, I gave a presentation at the parapsychology conference. It was held at the Noetic Sciences headquarters near here. I'd showed one of my films and mentioned at the time that I had been working with you guys, and I mentioned the Challenger. So when I was done, I went back to the back of the room and sat down. I was also filming the concerts of the conference. So I had a little desk at the back of the room. I sat there, and this woman came out of the audience quietly back to me and said, introduced herself, said, I'm a medium. And I too was contacted by Krista McAuliffe. She was, as you probably recall, the school teacher, the first civilian astronaut, who was then, as we know, killed in the Challenger accident. And she said, yes, Krista came to me as well. And her grief was so intense that I could not take it. And I had to literally send her away. She said, I felt badly about that, but I had to do it. So I said, oh, I understand. So later on, she contacted us. Trying to remember her name at the moment.
Lindahl,
yes. Lindahl Demir. And she was a practicing healer and psychic, lived in Carmel, California. And then not too long ago, I think it was last year, she passed away. And I believe it was through you, Jeanne, that she came and said hello and sent regards to us. What was that experience like for you?
well, I was surprised. I knew that she had battled cancer, and I guess had kicked it, but then it had come back. And I think it even took her by surprise. When you say that, I can feel it right now, because she just loves groups like this. She gets so excited. I mean, I know you guys all know this because you're all connected to this kind of thing, or you wouldn't be here. But it's a small group in comparison to the billions of people on the planet. But we're all just connected in this web of compassion and the desire to, make things better. But I did have Lindahl come through me a couple of times just to chat with me, and I felt sad. We had talked before that because we talked about our experiences, and she invited me to her house, and it just wasn't going to work for my schedule and such. And I understood what she was going through because of the experiences that I had with Krista, and it was wonderful to really be able to talk to her about it. Because I could feel that she had this experience with Krista. It was not about, oh, you probably didn't, or this or that. No, because anyway, very legitimate. I know other people who had similar experiences with Krista as well as others, because there's this huge energy coming into trying to heal themselves, but also then build a bridge of consciousness between the two worlds. And but with Lindahl, it was, I feel her at times helping me work with things and get things done because of her skills and ability. The other person is, oh my God, I can see your face, Roy. You got to help me here. Ah, Jaguar woman. Oh my God, my God, my God, I can't remember her name. Another L word. Anyway, I had done some work for her in this new power deck that she'd had, and she's been around. Lynn Andrews.
Then
And she we had a different experience when I first met her because it was a lot earlier in her career. But as she has aged, she's really done some wonderful things. And um, she's just these people come to help and assist us. They don't want to take over. I mean, we would be aware if somebody was trying to take over, and we would say no. But they're just more friendships in a very passionate field. And I mean, they're like friends. It's like calling somebody up on the phone and having these experiences. I hear them so clearly, like Regina. Like when I was, when John Denver's communication comes through, I could hear just the tone in his voice, the way he would say things. The same thing with Carrie. Oh my God, I love her. There's her communication on Cosmic Voices about Christmas and who she is. She just translates herself so well, and because I feel comfortable, I don't have any need to narrow my reception skills. I just let them come through because I feel very safe in their energy. I feel very clear with the spirits that are guiding us and protecting us, and so it's easy for me to be available to these people that I know.
I was just recalling actually one of my most intense experiences of attending your channeling sessions at the FMBR group. We were touching in with the Columbia crew. One of the crew, the commander, a man named Rick Husband. He was in charge of the flight, and as the Columbia began breaking up, it had hit the atmosphere. It was heating up. As you probably remember, one of the thermal tiles on the bottom of the craft was damaged, started burning through. The cabin depressurized. People were panicking, trying to get their helmets on, trying to get their oxygen running, and it was all to no avail. The commander, Rick, as I understand it, felt responsible for this, felt responsible for his crew, and retained into his afterlife some serious trauma about it. And it was a trauma he carried for years. And during this session, Regina helped him release this trauma into the physical. And it was, I would say, the most intense experience I've ever witnessed in the whole realm of channeling that I'm familiar with. Would you like to just say at least a few words about your experience of being that channel for him?
It was intense. It was the intensest moment I've ever felt. I've had some pretty big ones, but nothing like that. And I think, if a matter of fact, he came through the other day to me, just 2 days ago on their anniversary. I sat down to listen to him, and that I was almost concerned whether I was going to have to go through this again by myself. But the intensity of it caused physical issues for me throughout the channeling, and was quite extreme, raising my blood pressure to a dangerously high level, and I couldn't breathe, and I totally thought I was going to be on the floor with some serious issues. But a part of me that was stuffed all the way to the back of the corner of my mind kept saying, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there. We're almost through. We're almost through. We're going to get it. We're going to do this. And I knew I was safe because Jeanne was next to me. I had no doubt. That was the biggest reason why I didn't stop, because Jeanne was next to me. And I knew that if I hit that point where there was no return, she would have been pulling me right back. I had no doubt in my mind. And so for that whole experience, I asked them, I asked today, or the other morning when I was going to walk the dogs early in the morning, and I open the door and I hear "Good morning" from downstairs in my office area, where the dogs race up, and I let the dogs out and I say good morning, and I don't even pay attention to who's saying good morning to me. I just good morning, and the dogs go out and come back in, and mind you, there's nobody downstairs but the dogs. So I come back in, I feed them, take care of themselves, get myself dressed, do my prayers, head downstairs, and they said, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." And I go look down, and the whole room is orange color feeling, just the tone of orange. And I realized it's the crew. It's the Columbia crew there. And they were waiting for me. And I thought, I kind of got scared at first because I thought, I can't do this again. Don't ask me to do this by myself in a way. But that bigger part of me says, I'm here for you. So the human part goes, bravely, run away bravely. But so I asked one of the other crew members, her name is Laurel Clark, she's one of the doctors on board, and I asked her, I said, why did you allow this to happen to me? Why couldn't I pass Rick off to Jeanne Love? Because the experience was so intense. And my heart was going crazy, and I was sicker than a dog afterwards, and I almost passed out, and blah, 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 blah. I whined and whined. Well, and she said, are you finished? And I said, yeah, okay, what? And she said, Jeanne couldn't handle it. She could have had a heart attack. And that's what they told her. They said, she could not physically handle it, and your body could. And we needed his trauma to be released because he couldn't fully go through his life review without letting go of his trauma that he had there, because it was holding him back from going further into his own process. He was so stuck in that area. And that was such a learning thing. And all this has been a learning experience of what entities go through on the other side. They're just not all of a sudden saved. They have to go through so much more. They're just without the body, and they have to. I am learning stuff every day, and I could not be who I am without Jeanne. Definitely.
Yeah,
What a
give me the
What a team.
It is a team.
Well, and the thing is, what I didn't know at the time is that I had a major heart attack in my LAD, which I had survived, but I didn't know it. And so Spirit knew it. And that's why and she hadn't told me this until I'm just hearing this now.
I couldn't tell you the other night. I couldn't.
Yeah. So, they know things we don't know. And it was a couple of years until I found that out. So Spirit does have our back and our fronts and all the parts in between.
I wonder how common it is for one to go to the other side and be retaining trauma strongly enough that it has to be released physically. I had never heard of that before. But,
May I answer?
Yes,
Answer that?
please,
Because I've done a lot of work. I think there's a part of me that loves to be that rescue worker. I'm working with that because it isn't always in my best interests, and it has to be done in balance. But I was trained as a rescue worker, and from one of my very brilliant teachers, and just learning how to help people over, especially when a person died suddenly or they died, tragically, whatever, just to help them acclimate. Because there was always there's this thing going around that, if you just pray enough for people, everything will be fine, and it simply is not true. It just simply is not true. Some people, absolutely. But others, even if they are very enlightened and have understanding, we have a multiplicity of parts, and we aren't necessarily all in frame with that. We can get very fractured during a tragic leaving, and parts of us go flying all over the place. And we found that out with the Challenger crew a year afterwards. That's other stories. But continue to help them to gather their parts energetically. So, that was how I was trained. And the only reason why I sat in meditation that first night after the Challenger crew exploded, or the ship exploded, was to help them. Just everybody was praying, everybody was meditating. It was wonderful, and it was there for um, to help them, get acclimated. I had no idea what was about to happen. I wouldn't have done it, as my daughter, who's on the other side, said, "Mom, if you knew what was going to happen, you wouldn't have done it." But it was my commitment, my contract, whatever. But I've worked with kids who have been taken or lost or some horrible thing. Help them to get to the right uh, uh, family members or spirits or angels or whatever works for them to get them over into the right area and configuration and not be lost in some in between space or any kind of chaos, etc. And it's natural for me to do that, but it's very traumatic. When Regina was talking about working with Rick, that was the kind of thing that happened to me with Krista the first night, because they had her kind of in a holding pattern, and you can read about this on the FMBR website. But she didn't really know where she was or what was going on, and my husband was there, and a person that lived with us, he rented a room for us, and he was also they were into this, so we knew what to do, because I was suddenly so not in my body, and Krista was there, and of course, to be expected. I mean, she didn't come in and say, "Oh yeah, we blew up, and I'm all in heaven now, and everything's going to be hunky dory." No, I mean, she was absolutely beyond repair, and she's, as a mother, Krista and I are only 4 months apart in age. We're both educators. There's so many similarities. Both musicians. Talk about soul groups. She just cried and cried and cried for her kids, and her kids were young. My kids were young, and I couldn't even hold myself together. The men had to literally hold my hands, keep her from just obliterating everything. And I was willing to hold her in that, because I understood her trauma and the devastation. Who knows what else reasons are that I did that, but it just took me a while, and I've been doing work in the last. I do a lot of energy work and healing work now. That's really where I work, or psychological healing and things like that. And I had to really work through the trauma that I had, like the doll had, of Krista's trauma. And of course, she didn't mean to dump it, but when you merge energies, of course, that's what's going to happen. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's something I just felt I had to do. And I also worked with the other crew members who had their levels of that. So when we got to Cosmic Voices, there've been so many years of working with people, helping them to understand why they're where they are, what their contracts are, et cetera, et cetera. Coming to Cosmic Voices was like the icing on the cake for me. It was like, this wasn't about trauma. They might have recalled it in their perspective of their message, but it wasn't about the trauma they'd gone through anymore. It was about telling people how beautiful it is to be alive eternally, and how to for people to understand that the fear we have needs to be wiped away, because it's just this illusion. It's a strong illusion. It's one we all buy into, as my daughter Kylene says in her writing that's on Cosmic Voices. But it's the transcendence of the spirit through the darkness. And they really come in to say, "Hey, you've got this. You've got this. We can do this. We can move on." As difficult as things might be, you're here forever, and you're your own creator. Message is not only of hope, but hopefully goes beyond hope into a knowing that there's more than we could ever possibly imagine waiting for us right here and now, not for when we pass, but right here and now. So our transition, whenever it's going to take place, can be as smooth and easy as possible, and to remove the trauma now of other things maybe we've stored in our consciousness, so that we can go over more peacefully. But it's not an easy thing to sit with somebody and I, to this point, really don't do a lot of channeling. I do more, we'll kind of merge space now and, get the message through, because I don't need them to come in so completely. That's what I would like to share, my perception and my perspective of what it was like.
Thanks, Jeanne. We're coming up on almost an hour now. And so I would like to invite another one of our participants today to come in if she'd like to do it. Her name is Anya Bednarczyk. We met last Friday, I think it was. I've lost track of the days, weeks, and months, when I gave a presentation here in Marin County about my new book. And Anya was present, asked some really good questions, and we got together for lunch yesterday and continued our conversation. I've invited her to attend. She's here, and I was wondering, Anya, if you have any questions for Jeanne and Regina. And
thank you so much, Dan, for the opportunity, and Jeanne and Regina for your amazing stories. I guess a question I had, it's similar. Dan was sort of asking earlier, how common is it for someone in spirit to need to use a human vehicle to sort of purge some of that trauma? I've heard other mediums talk about sort of there being zones in the spirit world where there's extra healing that happens and additional specialized resources that sort of get put into play in order to heal issues, including for people who are maybe dangerous to other spirits in the spirit realm, that they kind of get separated into sort of they don't get put into general population, so to speak. Do you have any experiences of your own that you could share about that, or thoughts on that?
Or Jeanne, either way. I just had an experience yesterday that an entity was not moving on whatsoever through her process on the other side. She was definitely on the other side, but her parts of her were very separated due to mental illness, I'll just say, or, personalities that were very disoriented. People that have Alzheimer's and things like that, who go over very confused. Sometimes they can be healed on the other side without any issues. Friends and families who are there, or those who are here, working with them and releasing them completely and forgiving all the many things that may have caused pain. But there's sometimes the entity just doesn't believe that they were that much of a problem. And also, if the illness is too great, then the story in their head is completely believable, even if it's a lie. So they keep repeating negative stories, and they're not getting into their real life review because they're not really experiencing what it means to experience the pain or joy that you've impacted another individual. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. So for this individual entity, she had to hear from her daughter how destructive the entity was to the family in all of the decisions she had made, and what that has caused in the long run. And through that process, I was just flabbergasted to see the furor of the entity come forward. Absolutely furious, because she was quote unquote found out. She was
Busted.
gently saying she was busted. She was gently saying she was sorry for everything, but there was a part of her that was not genuine at all. And she was saying it like the teacher says, go over and tell him you're sorry. Yeah, sorry. That's kind of how she was like. And the teacher says, now say it like you mean it. Sorry like I mean it. And finally, the kid, who the teacher, who's supposed to be saying sorry, gets kicked by somebody else because they're so tired of hearing the same old, same old. And that's kind of what was happening, even as this entity was coming forward. So that I don't need any more than that, but sometimes there, and I wasn't expecting any of this when I went to do the work that I did, but sometimes there has to be a human interaction that goes on. And that's really where it's at sometimes. It doesn't always have to be. And I would love it all to be all about lovely closures and wonderful, wonderful, delightful embraces, and everybody's crying and happy and the world sings again. But a lot of times it's not, and that's kind of why they're there. They're coming back to resolve certain things. And I look around and see this group of people, and there are so many folks behind each one of you. Every one of you have so many people and loved ones, really, who want to be in your life, who want to guide you and want to share with you their moments of beauty and kindness and joy. And for so many, there's a tendency of focusing on the one dark spot on the wall as opposed to all the joyful entities who are here to help. So if I can impart anything on you, all of you, is to really pay attention to the signs, pay attention to the messages your friends and family and loved ones, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, people you've never met before, who are here guiding you, dropping a penny on the floor or putting a rose at your feet or going, wow, there's a butterfly. Just little things, and go, I wonder if someone's here with me, because more than not, you're not alone. I can guarantee it.